Welcome to the Own It Show. I'm Heather Lee Chapman, your holistic performance and business coach. And I'm so excited to be here with you all today. It's time to stop sacrificing your health and freedom and start scaling your results in your business and all areas of your life. Here at Own It Empire, we help entrepreneurs become high performers and increase their awareness so they can increase their impact and create profitable business online so that you can truly own it.
All right, and welcome back to the Own It Show. I am Heather Lee Chapman, your high performance coach, and I'm so grateful to be bringing you a new special guest, Laura Wallace, today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for holding space for us to have a chat.
Oh, my pleasure. And today we're going to be talking all about how to own your gutsy. So tell us a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yeah, Gutsy is such the foundation for everything that I do and I teach. And to me, Gutsy is really owning who you are, what you actually want, and then giving yourself permission to move forward with it, right? Like we're taught so many different ways. We're conditioned in so many different ways. So many belief systems are instilled in us of what we should do. And it's so easy to just go with the flow and do what everyone else is doing because that maybe seemingly feels easier, right?
Yeah.
But Gutsy is when you step back and you're like checking in with yourself, like, who am I and what do I actually want? And I know that my decisions don't have to make sense to anybody else. It's doing things that go against the grain. It's following your heart and your soul. It's saying yes to the things that maybe don't make sense to anybody, but they don't have to. It's really pursuing the things that light up your soul and living that life, right? And I know easier said than done, but living a life in a box, in a container, doing the things that you feel like you should, doing this mundane routine stuff, always thinking about what could be, that takes so much more time, money, and energy than actually stepping out, taking a risk, being gutsy, and saying yes to you.
I love that. So say yes to you and what sets your soul on fire and not what we think we should quote unquote do. Through all the conditioning of society tells us always to go one way. And as my coach calls it, the Kairos moment is really like answering that moment that sets your soul on fire, your God's calling, like what is your inner soul telling you to do versus what you think you're supposed to do. So I'm all about owning it and being gutsy. So I absolutely love that. And then why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah. So I go by LauraAura. I'm an alignment coach for driven women. I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs, a lot of women that are in kind of a pivot point or at the beginning of like, I feel something more is calling me, but I am overwhelmed or I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. I need kind of a guiding light. I need some direction. So I love helping women get out of their own way. I love holding space for real, raw conversations. I'm a big fan of saying all the things that we're all thinking and feeling, but maybe don't have the space or support to vocalize it. And I do that through my community, through my coaching, and also through the Gutsy Podcast, which is a top 100 show that I'm super proud of. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. And we're just having very raw conversations and getting out of our own way, shifting those old thoughts, beliefs, and habits that keep us perpetuating in the same cycle. And actually start doing the thing that we want to do. It's really exhilarating to see these women come alive. Like it is my life's work.
And I think that is you leaving your legacy. That's your life's work, is to help people come alive. Like I think when you said that, I'm like, that is it. See people enthused about their life, co-creating their life, having it fulfill them and be the way they want it to be. And it sounds like, isn't that the way we all have it? But I know that it isn't.
Yeah.
And it takes courage. It takes courage to step into a life that you want. It takes courage to actually even go inside and ask yourself what you want and hear the true answers, not the conditioning. So thank you for doing what you do, because the world is a better place when we all are doing what sets our soul on fire. So much a better
Couldn't
place.
agree more.
I love it. And what is your favorite piece of advice, the thing that helps you so much now that maybe you wish you had known before?
Gosh, I mean, we could have a whole like half day segment on just that question alone. But I think that one of the most important things that women don't need permission, but sometimes need to hear is that you're allowed to want what you want. And it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to look calculated on paper. You don't have to have every single who, what, when, where, how, and why figured out. But if we really tap into when is the last time that you asked yourself, what do I want? I mean, that's a really big question, right? And a lot of times when I ask women that, it's like they pull back a little bit and they just kind of start to gaze off and they're like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
And so if you're hearing this and you're feeling like I don't know what I want, I first want to validate and let you know that that's okay. You are
Mhm.
not the only one. You are absolutely in a collective with so many other people because we get caught in routine. We get caught in responsibilities. We get caught in the shoulds. And we just start living this life that takes us on a journey, right? And no matter where you are or what you're doing, it's not right or wrong. It's really about coming back to who you actually are. And so I ask you today, when is the last time you asked yourself, what do I actually want? And this can be in your career, this can be in your finances, this can be in your relationships, your spouse, your friendships, where you live, the kind of clothes that you wear, right? It really comes down to these tiny, 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 tiny decisions, sometimes big ones, but more often than not, the big change comes from the little tiny decisions. And so pausing before any question or any answer that you give and tune into yourself and say, okay, what do I want in this situation? Do I want to join that board of directors or do I not? Do I feel like I should, right? Do
Mhm.
I want to go to that family event or do I not? Is this a day that I really need to be home and resting, right? Like it's just such tiny decisions that add up to really great change. And, your intuition is forever talking to you. It is forever guiding you. I like to call it leaving breadcrumbs. And so
Yes.
your intuition is kind of directing you which way that is the next way to go. And we're just so quick to put that off, put that aside. That's not enough, right? Like we don't trust that our own intuition is enough. So whatever comes up for you, just be curious with it. Explore what it's saying. It doesn't mean you have to make a decision today or overnight. It doesn't mean you have to flip over the whole damn table and move across the country, right? We're just we're just exploring what do I actually want? And if you start to ask yourself that question before making any decision, you're going to start to notice a really big difference in your life.
I love that. And then you have to listen to that intuition and
Hmm.
follow what the heart is saying and not what the logical mind is reasoning for you.
Yes.
I love that. And I like to do this exercise with people called dream state. So if I waved a magic wand and you could have whatever you wanted, be, do, and have, what would that look like? And you're absolutely right. Most people haven't paused to think about it. And then that second ingredient is that trust, the trust of yourself, the trust of the intuition, and then the follow through on what that looks like, regardless of if we've got all the pieces figure out along the way. If you have the first breadcrumb, follow it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's look, we get caught in the details of the bigness of how I'm going to make it happen and when is it going to happen and it's all
Mm.
in the big details, but really the first piece is to listen and then to trust. Take one next step.
Yeah, decide what you want, listen, trust, and take the next best step.
Yep.
Beautiful. I love it. So everyone's going to be
Simple, not easy, but simple.
easy to do and just as easy not to do.
Yes. Yes.
Even easier not to do. And may you all get in the habit of having faith and trust in yourself and your intuition and follow that inner guiding light instead of what external circumstances and societies should be doing. I love how Tony Robbins said, stop shoulding all over yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, and instead, let's trust that intuition, which I love, brings us to your power back process. So, owning what you want and bringing in that power back process. So, tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned this. Our subconscious mind loves to try and run the show, right?
Mhm.
It's like your online storage bin. It's where every memory is stored. It's where all your experience and your knowledge is nestled in. And its primary role is to keep you safe, right? And so when you start to own, okay, this is what I want to change careers. I want to open the business. I want to raise my prices. Insert any bajillion reasons, right? Your brain is going to want to jump in the way.
Mm,
And more often than not, the women that I'm working with, the only reason that they're not where they want to be yet is because they have unintentionally stopped themselves,
mm.
right? They've got caught in the details and the self-doubt and other people are better at this than I am. And how am I going to do all these things and all the stuff that your subconscious wants to tell you? So I developed this going through this myself. And it's funny because when I was going through this, I didn't realize I was creating a process until later on. And I was like, oh, this is how I would walk somebody else through this. So the power back process is intended to help you get out of your head when it wants to go rogue, when it wants to start telling you all those terrible things about yourself and you start overthinking and you get all wound up and you know how it is, right? We all
Those
experience it.
stories, the
The
stories just go and
stories.
go and
Oh,
go.
and listen, the conversations that you have with yourself are the loudest ones that you'll ever hear.
Mhm.
And your body and your mind want to reinforce those thoughts, not because it wants you to continue to feel bad, but because that's what you're telling it that you want.
Mm.
And so we have to be very mindful of what we're saying to ourselves. So the power back process is simple. You can do it anywhere. You don't need to buy anything. You can do it in silence in a group of people. You can do it out loud with yourself, whatever you want to do. But it is a very simple process to help you shift that thought. So instead of those thoughts taking you down the rabbit hole and stopping you from doing the thing that you want to do, it course corrects, it interrupts that pattern and gets you back to alignment so that you can move forward in the way that you actually want to do. So it's an acronym, AURA, aura, pun fully intended.
Love it.
The first piece is A, which is awareness. Without awareness, you can't change hardly anything,
Yeah.
right? You must get very consciously aware of your thoughts. What am I saying? What am I thinking? My feelings. Okay, where am I feeling this in my body? What am I saying to myself? Where does this pop up? Right. So if you're like, oh, I want to start a business, and then you're immediately like, well, I don't know how to do that. Okay, I need to think. I'm interrupting it immediately by just noticing. That's all awareness is noticing. Again,
Love
we
it.
get caught in this autopilot. And
Mhm.
if we don't stop for even a second to notice what we're saying or how we're feeling, it's very difficult to shift that. So first, get aware of your thoughts and your feelings.
Love it.
Second piece is you, which is to unpack it. This is a very gentle, loving, curious state. I like to think of this like talking to your inner child. How would
Mm.
you talk to a little one that is upset or confused or overwhelmed? Where did this come from? Is this an old story from the past? Did you see something that triggered you? Is there something that your body is needing right now? We're just simply unpacking where all of this is coming from. When we do that, we start to soften this, right? Like instantly, we start to diffuse the bigness of this thought or this feeling. Then we can go into R, which is to reframe it. What is really true? This is where your higher self comes in and is like, you know that you're ready to do this, right? I have figured things out before. I can figure this out too. I have lots of people in my world that I can lean on. If I don't have somebody in my immediate world, I have the world at my hands that I can get on any forum or group and find an answer or some direction. I can trust myself enough to figure this out, right? The reframe is where you really start coming back into your aligned self to be like, okay, I know what's actually true and possible. So let me get back to that embodiment.
Get
And
back to
then,
possibility.
yes. And then we can move into the final piece, which is A, aligned action. This is now where we are consciously moving forward. This is where we are in our mind, we are in our body, we are realigned with ourselves and our higher mission, what we were actually called to do. And now we're moving from that space. So now we've taken this like kind of chaotic storm around us. We've pulled it back in. We've regrounded in ourselves. And now we're moving forward. This is where you get to make conscious decisions, my friend. This is where you get to choose what you're going to do instead of perpetuating the old crap that keeps you in the same cycle. So if you really want to break a habit, break a cycle, get out of something, or really start to make movement forward, this process, I promise you, if you start to use it, even in the tiniest decisions, it starts to make incredible movement for you pretty damn quickly.
Absolutely. And I just want to throw it out there for most of us, 95 to 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and actions are on autopilot. That's why that first step that she said, the awareness, is essential. If we aren't in the now with the power to observe our thoughts, which means you've removed yourself from the emotion of it and just observing it, that's the awareness. And then the unpacking, I think, is where what you said, come with compassion. That's the moment when we often want to go and judge ourselves, make ourselves bad and wrong. And everything just is. Nothing's good or bad, right or wrong, except for what you make it. You observe the thought. It is just what it is. And then have some compassion and ask yourself some questions. And I always love the question like, well, what would I prefer? And that's a great reframe to bring you back to possibility, because immediately as soon as we try to go and make a change, as you said, that unconscious mind's job is to keep you safe. So we will begin to self-sabotage. And if we observe it and then decide what we prefer, of course there's a contrast. We can be grateful for that contrast and then stay focused on what it is that we actually desire and what it is that we prefer. And that reframing, because 80% of our thoughts, of most people's thoughts, are negative.
Yeah.
So the observing requires a reframe because it's often not in a positive state. And that thought process is what is currently getting us the same results. So if we want to change, we actually have to change the thinking, which requires us to be present and observe the thoughts. That's why I do yoga, practice that process of being in the now, which is a great book, by the way, The Power of Now. Will change your life if you haven't read it. And then the next is, once you've reframed, is to actually, as you said, like move into the action of what it is that we desire and in the energy of the goal achieved. It doesn't work if we get all pumped up and go and take the actions, yet the energy is still in fear, worry, and doubt. That's where in the first tip you were saying, have that trust and that belief in yourself. And that is an essential ingredient when you're going to take the action, because there's the physical action and then there's the metaphysical, which is more powerful. And that's the energy that you're sitting in. Do you believe it's possible? Do you believe what you're saying? Or you're just like, oh, this amazing girl, LauraAura, told me this great exercise and I'm doing it, but I'm doing it with the attitude of doubt. Right? Yeah. So make sure that the energy, like what an incredible exercise, make sure that when you go and take that inspired action, that energy is in alignment with the goal achieved, with your desired outcome. That intention is essential. And there's the physical and the metaphysical. So sit in the energy of it and decide what you prefer, and then get into inspired action in that one simple step. Follow that breadcrumb. I love it. And the reframing is the simplest exercise to do. And we don't do it is because we don't observe and we aren't aware we're on that autopilot. So let's break that cycle of having the same thoughts, which have us have the same feelings, which have us take the same actions, and then we get the same results. And we look at those results and we have the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same actions, and we get the same results. And you get the cycle. And so we actually have to put something in to interrupt the cycle, to get off the autopilot, which is 98% of our thoughts, feelings, and actions automated every single day based off that unconscious mind, which is just simply made from the model of the world you grew up in and the conditioning and what was passed on to you. And so that's living by default. And now it's time to live by design. And in order to do that, you have to have the awareness of what is happening up here in this amazing mind of yours, but it's always so busy. I love it. And next, I love the next tip is messy action. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, messy action. I was just having this conversation with a beautiful soul earlier this morning. And it's really all about taking one next step, right? Like we get very fixated on the bigness of things, the details, having things perfected, having everything laid out, having everything designed perfectly, having, basically the blueprint of your life down on paper. Like, how many times have you sat down with a notebook and you're like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And then you stare at it and you wander off and you start doodling in the corner. And then you think about something else that you need to do. And you can't always make that stuff happen. When you're in flow, when the energy is in alignment, yeah, that can be very constructive. But to like sit and force yourself to figure out every piece of every single thing that you're doing right now can be really draining and honestly really discouraging. So for me, teaching messy action gives you permission to do one next thing without needing to have all of that stuff figured out. And it's in the smallest of decisions. It's getting the intuitive hit to send the email and sending the email. It's registering the business. It's saying no to something. It's, adding one thing to your website or putting up one post, right? Like, it's the messy action, the little tiny one steps are so grossly underrated because we want the result of the big thing that we're working towards. But we're so focused on the bigness of that we forget that how we get that is by taking tiny incremental steps forward towards it. Because when we do that, we create momentum, and momentum opens up opportunity. We get clarity in that place. We get confidence in that place. Like, things or people cross your path that probably never would have, but because you are flowing with it, you are moving with it. You're letting the universe know, like, hey, I'm willing to do this. I want this. I'm doing the work. Even if it's this tiny, tiny thing, I'm putting intentional energy into that. And by doing that, we create all of that stuff that we're looking for, which is the clarity and the confidence and the trust and all these things that you can't just like go to the store and buy that stuff off of a shelf, right? You can't Pinterest quote your way to confidence, right? You might get these little bursts of inspiration and interest, and you might see a reel that like kind of lights your fire, and that is fantastic. But the sustainable stuff is from getting inside of your own brain and doing the messy action, right? Going through that process that we just talked about, and then taking the messy action, doing the one next thing, regardless of how tiny it feels. That is creating the momentum to pull that big thing closer to you.
I love it. And one of my coaches says, build the plane in the air. And we have to reverse engineer it. Sometimes we just don't get into action because we're just looking at the big picture and it looks overwhelming. So if we know what is that next best step to take, it often will help lead us to the next one. So I always say a plan is essential because it gets you out the gate. But I guarantee you that's not going to be the plan that actually gets you there. Because if you take that one next step, it's going to lead you to the next step and get you in the momentum. And if you're in the flow, it's actually going to give you an even better plan than you could have ever thought of yourself. But you have to have a plan to get yourself out the gate, to get going, to take that next step. I love how Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking forwards, not looking backwards. And this really means that you're only going to figure it out by trying to figure it out, by getting into the action and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. What do you like? What do you not like? What's the next best step from there? And for so many of us, we just look at that big picture, which has us never get started. And then what I hear all the time is, well, then when I will. When I get this, then I'll do it. When I have it all figured out, then I'll do it. When I have all the money, when I have all the time. And that never is going to happen because it stays in the future, because that intention in your mind is that it'll happen in the future. But what if the momentum builds and all the things came along the way because you just took that next step? It's like opening a book, and because you took the next step, then the next page turns. And if you're in the flow and following that guidance, I love how Bob Proctor always said, sometimes it'd be something that you could never figure out. You're in line at the grocery store. You see something on the stand. It has you think of something. I'm going to message that person. That person you message, turns out they have just hired somebody on their team who could also work on your team or what have you. And it's your next best step. So it's really like being open to the possibilities, be in the flow, see the signs, see the breadcrumbs, follow the intuition, follow that inner guidance. But it can only happen when we take the step. And for so many of us, we don't take it because we think we have to have it all figured out. But the one step leads to the next step, which leads to the next step. And if you don't get started, nothing happens. No momentum's built. No next breadcrumb is presented to you. The page doesn't turn, and that's where we stay in the same. And we're either growing or we're dying. And in neurolinguistics programming, we say there's only feedback, no such thing as failure. We only fail when we quit. So what if you just get some feedback, right? Take that messy action, take that next best step, and be open to the feedback and possibilities. And then you'll know what your next best step is. So these tips are beyond priceless. They will help you really truly own your mind and get gutsy and have you step into that life that you're co-creating, that sets your soul on fire instead of by default and living how we think we should, which can be really draining because it doesn't set our soul on fire. Because we just think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing instead of actually what we came here to do. Leaving that legacy, doing that thing that sets your soul on fire, answering that inner calling. All that magic happens with the first step you said, which was awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just touch on one other last quick
Please.
thing on that is, I think that oftentimes we're worried about messing it up by moving forward without a perfect plan, or the perceived failure through other people's eyes.
Yes.
We put so much weight and give so much of ourselves away to the perception of others that we unintentionally abandon our own desires and who we actually are. And I know that's easier said than done, but when you can really start to reclaim and know that, again, nobody really has to fully understand, and they're not going to, because it's not their journey. And opinions are going to come regardless of what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
However you're showing up, somebody's always going to have something to say. I just read a comment earlier on my Facebook page that a year ago probably would have had me all wound up. And today I was like, okay, no big deal, right? Like, it's so much more about what's happening for them and so much less about what's happening for you. And so the sooner that you release the expectation that it has to be perfect, or this idea of failure, or what other people might think as you're doing this, when you really just stay focused on who you are and what you actually want, all of those pieces fall into place.
I love it. So just answering what you want without worrying about what other people think and just giving up. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know that it's about without worrying about what other people think, because I think that almost puts more pressure on the pressure. Do you know what I mean? I think it's about recognizing when you think that you're worrying about, or notice that you're worried about what other people think, and then reclaiming that and saying, okay, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, okay, people are going to say stuff. I know that this is for me. I know that this is what lights me up. I know that this is what brings me joy. I know that I feel called to do this. So I know that people are going to say stuff, and it's more just about acceptance of that. That's just part of any journey. But by reframing and getting back into yourself, you're choosing to continue to move forward on your aligned path instead of the path that others have constructed for you.
I love it. So may you move forward on your aligned path and not on what others have constructed for you. That's beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And we always like to finish off the show with a book recommendation, because I'm a bookworm. And if there's any last piece of advice or anything else you'd like to add on to our conversation today, and then what's your favorite book right now and why? I love books. So audio, written, reading, whatever sets your soul on fire, guys, just find a way to keep learning and growing. That's why I'm bringing these book recommendations for you. So whatever is your best way, because I know a lot of people, they don't read, but have you heard of audiobooks? Because I could do one of those a week. That's my favorite, but have me read a book in a week, highly unlikely. So
I'm the same way. I'm the
Yeah.
same way. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that first like crack of a new book,
Yeah.
and I have such good intentions, but just the way that I operate,
Mhm.
I absorb the information differently
Yeah.
through audio, and I just like to hear the personality of the author. So I just re-listened to, so now the second time, to Rachel Rodgers' We Should All Be Millionaires. I love listening to her because her personality shines directly through her book, which again, I feed off of the energy and I like hearing her personality. But she just humanizes the conversation around money, helps you get out of your own way, right? All those stories that we're talking to ourselves, she just calls it for what it is. And then gives you like really practical ways to start shifting those things and making changes in your finances. And it just, if you get to the end of the book and you're not ramped up and super in belief that we can all be millionaires, read it again until you do, because she gives a lot of really great wisdom in her book.
I love it. And you know, when things repeat and they show up repeatedly, it's a sign telling you to do it. So this is not the first time. It's at least the third time this book has come up for me. I've even bought it on Audible. So I will be listening to it next and really looking forward to it. So thank you for the reminder, Laura. I'm super, super excited. And I will come back to you with what I learned from it.
Excellent.
So thank you so much for today. What a wealth of knowledge, incredible energy. And guys, you're going to probably want to come back and listen to this episode again, because she gave you tips and broke it down into a way that if you follow what she said, the trajectory of the rest of your life could change from this one episode. So may it, and in your highest good and the highest good of all involved. And so Laura, where else can they learn more about you, and what would you like them to do?
Yeah. So the best way to find all things me is at LauraAura.com. It's LauraAura.com. I'm most active on Facebook and TikTok. I'm at that LauraAura, but also on my website, and there's links to that on my website. The Gutsy Collective. So if you thrive on the energy of other women doing their thing, really are looking to get some clarity, some direction, start to make gutsy decisions towards the thing that you actually want. This is an incredibly supportive group of very driven women that are at that pivot point, just like you are, that are taking action and making changes in their life. So I would love to absolutely see you on the inside. And you can find all the details at my website for that.
Excellent. And we'll have the link for you guys in the description as well. It's LauraAura.com/Gutsy-collective. And we'll have that below. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and your wisdom. And may you keep shining your bright light in this world and making it a better place and leaving that legacy.
Thanks, friend.
My pleasure. And remember, everyone, stay happy, healthy, wealthy. Expect magic and miracles. And what is the best that can happen? We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Own It Show today. Make sure to leave a review and subscribe. We want to thank you for your time and energy and extend the invite for you to join us in the Own It community on Facebook, an incubator for conscious entrepreneurs so that they can step into their greatness. We have tons of free trainings and resources for you, as well as a great opportunity to network with people leaving a positive impact on this world. Make sure to come back for next week's show. Have an incredible day. Remember, expect magic and miracles. Stay happy, healthy, and wealthy.